This is Jacob with his beloved goat. He loves that goat. He talks to her and drinks from her milk, and she keeps him company whenever he is on the road. She isn't very talkative like a dog that barks loudly with its irritating noise. Barking confuses Jacob's mind and irritates his ears. Jacob lost his sight at the tender age of 10. He awoke one day with darkness filling both his eyes. That's the day he lost his sight. He has lived with blindness ever since, and slowly he adapted to the darkness. But he often suffers from severe headaches and has to ask for precise descriptions of things. He is known for his kind nature and good manners. He has always been a quiet, nice person who never holds a grudge or hatred in his heart. One day, Jacob awoke to find his beloved goat missing. He sensed that thieves had stolen her from him in the middle of the night whilst he was sleeping. Stealing from a blind man, hidden by the darkness of the night, is an easy feat for anyone. Since she was a quiet goat, she didn't bleat or bite. His heart broke with sadness over the loss of her. He needed her voice to guide him and break the silence of the gripping loneliness he suffers from. Still, he felt sorry for such petty thieves, stealing from a blind man. But he carried on in his own way. Jacob passed some tiny village. The residents there recognized him and offered him food and drink. A child even gave him a rooster, and his little brother gave him a balloon as a token of friendship, to guide him on his path and to entertain him whilst he walked around. Jacob didn't carry a map with him to show him his destination, and he couldn't look at the stars to know if he was going in the right direction. So every time he felt himself drifting off the path, he stopped for a little while and put his hand on his beating heart and listened intently. When he felt ready, he went in the direction his heart whispered to him, hoping it was the right one. His kind heart was always his compass. His good intentions paved the road, and he had a deep faith guiding him. Plenty of rumors were swirling around that he was a genius who lost his sight from tireless reading. Others said he lost his sight from crying so long over his lover, or that he was a fortune-teller or a sorcerer who lost his sight from his demons beating him up whenever he engaged in magic and sorcery. Lots of rumors were going around, some good and others bad, but none of them affected him. They only made him laugh at how silly they were. With time, Jacob grew fond of the rooster that accompanied him. But the rooster wasn't pleased with the journey he was on. there were no chickens around him to show off his cockiness or misery. And since he was in the company of a blind man who couldn't appreciate his beauty and intensity whenever he strutted around, he walked carelessly and without much orientation, in a way that wasn't of much help to guide Jacob. So Jacob started walking in the front, and the rooster started to follow. On one of those extremely hot days, the balloon suddenly burst and frightened Jacob to his core. He started thinking someone was shooting at him, wanting to kill him. He was shaken to his bones with fear. And jumped to the ground as a way of surrender, saying over and over that he is a blind man who carried no weapon, that he is very poor and had no money worth taking, and that he is no threat to anyone. He lay on his stomach for a long time, hoping that whoever shot at him would answer, say something, or talk back at him. So when he heard nothing, he started to rise slowly off the ground, stopping midway and feeling his way on the ground slowly. He slowly crawled away from that place, forgetting the intense fear he was feeling, to take his food and things away with him. The loud bang left a heavy impact on Jacob, because it came from behind him and sounded so very close to him. And since he could hear no other voices nor any footsteps after the bang, he was left mystified by the incident, wondering what it could have been. Like a puzzle stuck in his mind. People without sight hate unfamiliar sounds, and sounds they don't understand. Jacob started questioning his own hearing abilities, thinking there was something wrong. This affected his senses as well, making him jumpy and extremely careful. One night, Jacob felt the sound of a vicious animal lurking nearby. The wolf caught the rooster with lightness and ease, leaving poor Jacob helpless and unable to do anything for his companion. How unfortunate. Jacob couldn't sleep that night. Fear was eating away at him slowly and persistently. Sadness filled him, and he felt sorry for himself for being so weak and helpless. The cold and hunger and loneliness ganged up on him, and misery held a grip ever so tightly, driving his head into complete madness. Jacob was in a very hard situation, and he knew it very well. A blind man with darkness casting its veil over his sight. Loneliness gripped his heart and solitude surrounded him in every direction. He was weak, poor and hungry, without any baggage. A stranger chasing him and wanting to kill him. Thieves had taken away whatever little he had. And wolves had feasted on his rooster. He had no weapon and no companion. There was no one there to protect him, and no one to help him. Was there anyone who would want to be in his shoes? No one would dare think that. With all that heavy burden on his shoulders, with all the sorrow and desperation and headaches weighing him down, affecting him so deeply, he started swaying in his walk. Careless, he was going in no particular direction, as if he wanted to take vengeance upon himself. Jacob stopped and sat down on the ground. He was tired and exhausted from being too hungry and too thirsty. He thought this could be an end to his life. He reassured himself that he had gone through bitter experiences like these before. Hard experiences had happened to him over and over in his past, such as when he lost his way as a child. For 3 days, no one knew where he was until the dogs from his village found him by accident. Jacob started to remember why he had left his home. In the pursuit of his dream of getting his eyesight back, when he heard about this famous and gifted doctor called Dr. Gibson, he was taken by a wild desire to visit that doctor. But that was hard on him. The distance was too far, more than 750 miles away, in a dangerous, bumpy and rough land, inhabited by all sorts of dangerous and violent bandits. Jacob tried finding someone to be his companion on his journey, to achieve his dream. But no one would accept to go with him because he didn't have enough money. Being a blind man's companion in a wild and dangerous land was too much of a risky adventure for anyone to take. And Jacob would only burden them, like a rock holding them back. Jacob slept near a rock, wanting never to wake up again. But hunger was stronger than his desire to sleep forever. It woke him up, and his stomach sent sounds of battles happening in its midst. And he couldn't for the life of him figure out what to do. He crawled on his hands and knees, feeling for any weeds, hoping to find something to eat, to quiet down his stomach. But he felt a sharp pinch on his hand that was very painful, and soon realized he had been bitten by a snake. He held his poor injured hand and shrieked in pain, screaming and crying. Tears rolled down his face as he cursed his pitiful situation. The poison started to make its way into Jacob's body. He felt his end coming near. There was no escape this time. Jacob lay down on his back, and his hand felt some wild weeds on the ground. He thought to himself, "I won't die poisoned and hungry at the same time. If those weeds are poisonous, then I am dead anyway, whether from a snake's bite or the beasts lurking around me." Nothing will keep me from devouring them. So he did as he said. He devoured so many of them with a strange appetite, like he couldn't stop himself any longer. Jacob lay back down on the ground, remembering when his wife disapproved of his journey. She didn't want him to go traveling on his own. It was almost like suicide, but his determination to travel was strong. When his wife realized she couldn't change his mind about traveling, she took their only goat and insisted she would accompany him on his journey. Jacob was exhausted, and he sighed, thinking it would be his last breath. But it was quite the opposite for him, and he didn't even know it. He started breathing fast, violently taking air into his lungs. His body was drenched in sweat. His muscles contracted, and he felt his stomach being cut to pieces, as if his head was about to explode. Hours went by. Jacob slowly started moving. Waking up, he felt very odd. There was no pain whatsoever, Yes, he was sure he wasn't feeling any pain at all, but he felt a funny tickling sensation under the band he had over his eyes. He slowly lifted the band away and opened his eyes a crack, then closed them back again. He sighed a little, and a smile made its way across his face. It was a vibrant smile, filled with joy. He took a deep breath, inhaling heavily, and opened his eyes. Laughter mingled with tears of joy exploded from his mouth, coming deeply from the inside of his chest. He had cheated death and regained his eyesight at the same time. He didn't know whether it was the snake's poison or the poison from the wild weeds that he ate, or if the reason he was alive and regaining his sight was from both of them mixing up together in his blood. But he knew it was the divine will that allowed for that to happen to him, leading him exactly where he had to go. Jacob looked at the sky and murmured to himself in a low voice with gratitude washing all over his face. For it is known that a blind person is of enlightened insight, sharp intuition, and unshakable faith. After Jacob regained his sight, he forgot all about the hunger and thirst he had suffered. He felt an amazing energy within him. He took a step forward, wanting to head back home, then stopped in his place. It wasn't easy living for many years with blindness. Then to use your sight so suddenly. He didn't know in which direction he must go, as everything he looked upon was unfamiliar, being seen for the first time. With the courage he had always been known for, he kept on walking in the direction he thought was home. He was going home filled with joy, eager to see the faces of his wife and children, his neighbors, and all the people he loved. But he was having a hard time walking, a difficulty he hadn't experienced before. It was very hard for him to walk on the ground. He felt it to be more rugged and bumpier than it had seemed to be before. He reached a road ending with a very dangerous slope, which made him have to look for another road. The area was difficult to walk on, and very rugged and jagged. He stumbled as his foot slipped, and he fell into a dangerous descent. Jacob regained his consciousness. And felt blood dripping from his head. He lifted his back, and screams of pain slipped from his chest. Whilst he was moving, he heard the clicking of coins, so he turned around and found stacks of golden coins behind him. despite his injuries and his unbearable pain. He wasn't going to let this lucky day go by with a sad ending. So again, he rose up. It was the rise of a real champion. And he went back home with his eyesight and his pockets filled with gold. Jacob used the gold to build a school for the children in his village. He spent it all on the poor and the orphans. He knew that he was a very lucky person, and that the divine care surrounding him was more precious than any gold in the world. After all he went through, would he need any more proof? Others call him Saint Jacob. I think of myself as an ordinary man, not a saint.